Hey y'all, my name is Blaine Cronrath and I am a recovering company man. My first job out of college, I got hired on as a reading teacher. The program that I was trained in, I absolutely fell in love with it. I thought I wanted to be a social studies teacher, but after working with those kids, seeing the progress they made through this reading program, I knew that that's exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be focused on really spreading this need to read. And so, because I developed that love for my program, that love for my students, it became really easy for me to start to make decisions to stay at work a little later than I was required to put in that extra time. And it got to that point where I didn't mind coming in on a holiday or weekends to get some things done. Now, the passion and effort I put in, as it does, caused me to be recommended for promotions. When we needed a new trainer for this program, I applied for it. I had a vision for what I wanted to do with it, and I took up that training position. Then came the opportunity for the principal's position opened up, and so I didn't have a vision for the principal's position. It's not exactly where I saw myself going, but I also felt this need to take the next promotion and always be climbing up the ladder. And I was getting some encouragement from my supervisor, who my supervisor at that time I had a lot of respect for. And so I took that position up into principal. Now, once I took on that principal's role, the weekends pretty much disappeared. There was a point where Saturday and Sunday, it really felt like I was off work, like I was away, like I was separated. But when I became principal, I was always connected. I was checking emails, I was going in, the weekends were just a little bit less structured work schedule, but I was working all weekend, I was working all week, I was working in the evenings. And realistically, I didn't mind. I wanted to do it. I enjoyed the work I was doing. I saw value. I thought there was purpose to it. What happened to me is the point came where my supervisor felt like she had a few too many direct reports. She had too many different tasks. Things kept getting added to her plate because she was exceptional at what she was doing. And so she had to restructure. And part of that restructuring was to move me from being a principal to an assistant principal and allowing one of the other principals in our system to become my supervisor. Now, she did ask me if I would be on board with this. What I knew about this principal at the time, everybody seemed to have a lot of respect for her, admire her, everybody liked her as a supervisor. And so I thought, you know what, this is going to be a pretty easy transition. The supervisor I was coming from very much had this mindset of giving me my autonomy, letting me do whatever I needed to do to be successful, just so long as I kept her informed. Now, I made the mistake of assuming the new supervisor would do the same. Unfortunately, what happened with the new supervisor is that she had more of the, let's say, traditional boss mentality, where in her eyes I wasn't a leader. I didn't have a team that I was managing. Rather, I was her messenger, and she was the one that was responsible for my team. So where I used to work with my team, I'd bring them a problem and we'd sit down, problem solve together, come up with a solution that we thought would work. Now it became this principal who's 100 miles away from us, isn't ever at our school, has no understanding of how our system works, is going to just tell me what we're supposed to do. And then I'm supposed to just communicate that to my team that this is the new solution. As you can imagine, nobody likes to lose their autonomy. I gave my team a great deal of freedom. I worked with them. I didn't tell them what the answers would be. I didn't try to manipulate them into thinking my solution was their solution. Instead, I came to them and said, here's the problem. Here's my thoughts on what we can do. But what are you all thinking? And when they came up with suggestions, when they disagreed with my thoughts, I was open to hearing what they had to say so that we came up with a solution that wasn't me telling the team what to do, but was the team deciding for themselves what they wanted to do. Now, as this new supervisor came along, it became very much, instead of me working with my team, it was me working against this new supervisor, me fighting for not only my autonomy, but the autonomy of my team as well. When I go to them and tell them this is what we're doing and they're used to having solutions and voice, they're naturally going to rebel against me. And what really started to happen is that my team had been the highest performing team for the past year or so. We'd produced a lot more graduates in the GED program than any of the other teams had been producing. We had been coming up with innovations that were then being adopted by the other teams. But as this new supervisor took away our ability to problem solve and said this is how it's going to be, all of that started to die down. Whereas me and my team used to be happy to put in a little extra time, a little extra effort to take up a project that wasn't needed but we saw as beneficial, all of a sudden nobody wanted to do that anymore. That desire, that motivation to do what's best for students started to die down because our autonomy was taken from us. Our voice was taken from us. Our purpose was taken from us because a lot of times the decisions that were being made were decisions that would make the data look good, but at the end of the day didn't really produce good results for students. We went from trying to do what was best for the student to doing what was best for the data, so that those that looked at our data would say, oh, look how good they're doing, they're hitting this number, and this number. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of students that aren't graduating. The one metric that matters, the graduation rate, wasn't being measured, and so nobody cared if students were graduating or not. People cared if students were passing the test on the first try. And I mean, I could get into a lot about why that's not the way we want to look at it, why failure is important in learning, but that's not the point of this video. And so what happened is that I was a company man. I was somebody that worked on weekends, worked in the evenings, came in on holidays, whatever needed to be done, I was going to do it. And then as this new supervisor comes along, as this new supervisor starts to strip away all of the elements necessary for intrinsic motivation, my intrinsic motivation starts to die. I become more of a quiet quitter at that point. I stop putting in that extra effort. Eventually, after about a year of fighting for my autonomy, I'm just exhausted and I show up, I go through the motions, I do what's required of me and nothing more. When the data starts to drop, people question it, what's happening, nobody wants to listen to the answer, and so it gets to that point where I can't do it anymore. I'm not the kind of person that is comfortable showing up to work, doing what's required to collect my paycheck, and going home at the end of the day. My work to me is my purpose in life. It's what I want to do. It's where my value is. I'm a servant leader, and I want to be in a position where my work's going to actually add some value to somebody's life, somehow makes the world a better place. And so all of this productivity that the company had been getting from me vanishes, and what's left isn't really all that useful to the company anyways, but eventually I step away. I decide I have to reconnect with my need for service, and so I go off and I decide to join the Peace Corps. I decide that I'm going to volunteer somewhere. I'm going to offer my skill set in a system that appreciates me. And that's exactly what I found in the Peace Corps. I found a system that appreciates me. I continue to find that work-life balance here. There just isn't as much work as there was back at my old company where I need to be on all the time. But I certainly would be. I have no problem staying late at school. I have no problem coming in on a weekend, helping out with something where something needs help. I mean, I love the work I do, and as long as I'm valued, as long as I'm appreciated, I'm going to be somebody who's willing to put in that extra time. When we provide our people with autonomy, when we provide them with purpose, and when we provide them with competency, we're going to have people that are happy to come in and put in a little extra effort. But if we eliminate those systems, if we fall under the standard system of the boss tells the employee what to do and the employee just follows suit, what we're going to have is a system of quiet quitters. And that's exactly what happened to me. I went from the company man to the quiet quitter because the system changed where the metrics necessary for intrinsic motivation were removed. I hope you all enjoyed this video. And in follow-up videos, I will go into more detail about what is required to build intrinsic motivation into employees and tell some more of my stories from transitioning from company man to quiet quitting.